Welcome to the Metabolic Compass podcast, where science becomes strategy. Each episode gives you the most effective tools to recalibrate your biology, restore direction to your health, and unlock lasting wellness, resilience, and peak performance. Welcome back to the Metabolic Compass podcast, where we recalibrate your biology and rediscover your direction. I'm your host, Brandon Soika. If you're a parent, a teacher, or anyone who spends time with kids or teens, you've likely felt it. Something's off. More children than ever are struggling with fatigue, emotional volatility, sensory overload, gut issues, and focus problems before they've even hit puberty. Teens are being diagnosed with anxiety, autoimmune conditions, hormonal disorders, and chronic fatigue at rates we used to see in adults decades older. And the hardest part? Most of the time, we're told it's just a phase, or worse, that it's behavioral. But when we zoom out and start reading these changes through the lenses of the compass, we see something different. Today's kids are drifting earlier. Their biology is losing coordination faster and younger than any generation before. In this episode, we're going to unpack why it's happening, what to look for, and how to help our kids reset their direction before these signals turn into diagnosis. We'll explore how modern stress, screens, food systems, and school rhythms are disrupting the very systems that should be building their resilience. And by the end, you'll walk away with practical steps to support your child's gut, energy, sleep, and emotions without turning them into a biohacking experiment. Let's begin with why this is happening in the first place. A child's biology is supposed to be robust, quick to bounce back, quick to adapt. That's what resilience means, being able to take hits and recover. But we're seeing something different now. We're watching foundational systems collapse sooner than they should. 10 years ago, if a 9-year-old came in with chronic constipation, eczema, severe anxiety, sleep struggles, and constant illness, we'd consider that rare. Now, it's increasingly common. And it's not because kids have changed, it's because their environment has, dramatically. Let's look at what's happening underneath the surface through the 4 compass domains. Nurture. Kids today are bombarded with ultra-processed food, low-fiber diets, antibiotic exposure, and increased C-section births, all of which shape the gut microbiome from day one. That means poor gut immune training, increased intestinal permeability, and a higher baseline of systemic inflammation before their immune system ever matures. The result? More food sensitivities, more histamine overload, and a higher likelihood of autoimmune patterns in adolescence. Energize. Next, we have mitochondria, those tiny engines inside cells. In healthy kids, these should be humming, but in reality, many children are already showing signs of mitochondrial suppression, low stamina, emotional meltdowns after short bursts of stress, and brain fog even after sleep. Research shows that chronic inflammation, ultra-processed foods, and high screen exposure contribute to oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction even in school-aged children. Strengthen. Bones, joints, muscles, hormones all require raw materials and time to mature. But if a child's system is constantly on alert, resources get pulled away from development and funneled into defense. We see this as poor muscle tone, slow growth spurts, disrupted puberty, and poor tissue repair. Even emotional resilience, like bouncing back after disappointment, is built on a sturdy neurohormonal foundation. If that's unstable, everything feels too much. Withdraw. And finally, the ability to pause, prune, and reset, the withdraw domain. Children and teens need time to consolidate learning, downshift nervous system activity, and clean up metabolic waste. But sleep deprivation, evening blue light, and erratic meal timing interrupt this rhythm. We now have kids who feel wired at night, crash during the day, and wake up unrested, even when they've slept a full 8 hours. So what are we left with? A generation of children whose systems are constantly reacting, not regulating. The question isn't, why is my kid so sensitive? The real question is, why are their systems interpreting everything as a threat? This is the core of early drift. Not a disorder, not a defect, but a loss of biological coordination in systems that were meant to develop in safety, rhythm, and nourishment. And unless we catch this early, these signs will harden into symptoms. If you've ever looked at your child and thought, this just doesn't feel normal, but no one can tell me what's wrong, you're not alone. Drift in kids and teens doesn't always show up as clear medical diagnosis. It shows up as disruption, in energy, mood, gut, focus, and recovery. And it changes with age. Let's walk through what drift looks like across different life stages so you can start connecting the dots before symptoms stack. Infants and toddlers. This age should be about growth, bonding, and foundational regulation. But drift can show up early, even in the first year. Common signs of early drift in infants and toddlers: chronic ear infections or frequent illness, severe diaper rashes or eczema, reflux or feeding intolerance, constipation or very loose stools, trouble settling for sleep or staying asleep, extreme sensitivity to light, sound, or touch. These aren't always normal baby things. They can be signs that the gut immune nervous system loop is struggling to find homeostasis. Studies show that children with gut dysbiosis in infancy are at a higher risk for immune-mediated conditions like eczema, asthma, and food allergies by age 5. And when sleep and digestion are dysregulated this early, the nervous system learns reactivity as the default. Early childhood from ages 4 to 8. This should be a time of cognitive expansion, social development, and emotional resilience. But many kids in this window are already showing system fatigue. Drift here often looks like afternoon meltdowns even on good days, frequent stomach aches, especially before school, seasonal allergies, skin flares, or asthma, extreme picky eating or sensory-based food aversions, emotional lability, big reactions to small setbacks, and difficulty with sleep onset, night waking, or nightmares. This isn't just emotional immaturity. It's often nervous system hypersensitivity layered over mitochondrial underperformance. When the body doesn't feel safe, it doesn't build bandwidth, it builds defense. And when children stay in defense mode too long, neuroinflammation can impair memory, focus, and mood regulation. Preteens, from ages 9 to 12. Here's where early drift gets masked the most. Preteens are often good at hiding discomfort until their system finally crashes. Here's what to watch for: loss of interest in movement, sports, or socializing. Random fatigue, especially after mentally or emotionally demanding days. Bloating, bowel irregularity, or unexplained food reactions. Focus issues that don't improve with sleep or routine. Frequent colds, slow healing, or mystery rashes. Emotional flatness or emotional overwhelm, nothing in between. At this age, mitochondrial drift and gut-brain miscommunication often feed each other. This can lead to post-exertional fatigue, mood dips, or even early signs of dysautonomia, a nervous system that can't toggle properly between stress and calm. Teens, 13 to 18. This is the age where most diagnoses begin to appear. But if we look closely, the drift usually starts years earlier. It's just now becoming harder to ignore. Common patterns include morning exhaustion despite 8 to 10 hours of sleep, anxiety, depression, or irritability that don't respond to talk therapy alone, brain fog, memory issues, or word recall problems, gut issues, constipation, IBS, acid reflux, that seem unrelated to diet, hormonal symptoms, irregular cycles, PMS, acne, hair loss, loss of motivation, creativity drive, or resilience under pressure. This is where Energize, Nurture, and Withdraw domains all collapse. And when teens are told it's just hormones or teen angst, they miss the chance to get the right kind of support. What's happening isn't drama. It's biology struggling to regulate under chronic stimulation, poor recovery, and unrelenting input. And here's what matters most. These are not random symptoms. They are patterns. And when you know how to read the patterns, you know where to begin. Drift doesn't always start with disease. It starts with disconnection from rhythm, from recovery, from rest. So what's driving this? In the next segment, we'll explore the modern inputs overwhelming kids' biology and why their systems can't buffer the way they used to. Let's talk about what's really happening under the surface before the labels get applied. Because whether it's picky eater, anxious kid, hormonal teen, or just moody, those labels rarely capture what's biologically unfolding. When kids drift early, it's not random. It's not weakness. It's not parenting failure. It's biology overloaded and undersupported. And if we dig deeper, we see the same core systems breaking down again and again. 1. Gut immune overreaction. By the time a child is labeled with a sensitive gut or allergies, their intestinal immune system has often been on high alert for years. Kids today are exposed to more antibiotics, processed foods, emulsifiers, and synthetic additives than any previous generation. Add to that less microbial diversity from the environment, less time outdoors, and more C-section births. What does this all add up to? A gut that no longer regulates the immune system. It inflames it. The result? Eczema that keeps coming back, histamine reactions with no clear trigger, food sensitivities that grow over time, a hypervigilant immune system that attacks friendly inputs as if they're threatened. And because 70% of immune cells live in the gut, this chronic low-grade inflammation spills over into the nervous system, the brain, and the mitochondria. 2. Mitochondrial drain from constant input. Kids used to have cycles of stimulation and rest: school, play, quiet time, sleep. Now, their brains and mitochondria are in constant on mode. From dawn to bedtime, their day looks like this: bright blue light on the eyes and brain before sunrise, sedentary learning with limited sun or movement, artificial lighting, processed lunches, noisy classrooms, social media, group chats, notifications during every break, afternoon activities with no wind down, followed by screen-heavy evenings. What does this do to their mitochondria? It creates energy mismatch. Fuel is used up faster than it's restored. This leads to brain fog after school, mood volatility that doesn't respond to logic, sensory overload or inability to come down at night, post-exertional crashes after sports or social events. And here's the key. Mitochondria don't just produce energy. They regulate cell danger response, how the body determines if it's safe to recover or stay on alert. 3. Nervous system burnout. When gut and mitochondrial signals are inflamed or incoherent, the nervous system becomes the default casualty. Children and teens begin to live in a fight or flight or collapse. What does this look like? Trouble transitioning between activities, panic attacks or social withdrawal. Trouble falling asleep or waking wired at 3 a.m. Loss of appetite in the morning, cravings at night. Seeming lazy or unmotivated, but it's actually just shut down. This isn't a behavior issue. This is the polyvagal ladder collapsing. The vagus nerve, which regulates rest, digestion, social engagement, and calm, is constantly overridden by threat perception. But here's the kicker. There's often no actual danger, just a miswired signal loop. And when no one sees this for what it is, these kids get labeled ADHD, ODD, anxiety disorder, chronic fatigue, depression. The symptoms are real. The diagnoses may be accurate, but the interventions often miss the mark. Because we're not treating the misfiring signal, we're trying to mute the output. Let's reframe the labels. Here's what we need to understand. Picky eating might be gut nervous system dysregulation, not willful defiance. Mood volatility might be post-inflammatory drift, not teen drama. Social withdrawal might be energy conservation, not laziness. Crashes after school or sports might be mitochondrial overload, not poor conditioning. When you understand the biology beneath the label, you shift from blame to clarity. You stop asking, "What's wrong with my child?" and start asking, which system is struggling to regulate and how can we rebuild it? And that's where we're headed next. Let's shift gears. We've talked about the symptoms, we've talked about the biology. Now let's bring it back to the framework, the metabolic compass. Because the same systems that drift in adults, the same compass directions we use to orient grown-ups, apply to kids too. But here's the key difference. Children and teens are still developing. Their biology isn't just trying to repair, it's trying to build. And when that building process gets interrupted by inflammation, overstimulation, nutrient depletion, or emotional chaos, the drift begins early. So how do the 4 compass domains show up in young bodies? Let's walk through it. Nurture drift. This is where it all begins. Young biology needs to feel safe in order to grow. That means a stable gut, low inflammatory load, consistent signals from caregivers, food, light, and rhythm. When kids drift in the nurture domain, here's what we often see: bloating, stomach aches, or random nausea, skin rashes, eczema, or sensitivities that come and go, frequent colds or lingering illnesses, emotional volatility, meltdowns, or regression in behavior, sleep disturbances, especially early morning waking or nightmares. Nurture drift is often the first domino. If we ignore it, it pulls every other domain out of sync. Energize drift. Once the gut and immune system start signaling threat, the mitochondria begin to downshift. In a developing child or teen, that might look like fatigue after short bursts of activity, trouble focusing in class or spacing out midday, poor recovery from sports or sleep that doesn't feel restorative, new onset mood changes, especially after illness, blood sugar swings that show up as hunger-driven tantrums or headaches. Here's the catch. Most adults interpret this as low motivation. But kids don't have the language to say, I think my mitochondria are redox imbalanced and stuck in glycolysis. They either melt down or shut down. And we miss the real message. My body doesn't have the energy to adapt right now. Strength and drift. This one gets overlooked the most, especially in growing bodies. Strength and drift is when kids and teens start losing the ability to repair and build. In kids, that might show up as slow growth velocity, frequent injuries or joint pain, lack of muscle tone or low grip strength, developmental coordination delays, fragile bones or cavities despite good hygiene, and flat mood or low resilience in the face of stress. For teens, this can become more dramatic, like sudden weight gain or loss, menstrual irregularity, or immune crashes during finals or sports seasons. We assume they'll bounce back because they're young, but that's not a given anymore. Their repair access is already strained, and we're layering more expectations on top of it. Withdrawal drift. This is the shutdown phase. When the nervous system, gut, and mitochondria have been signaling threat for too long without resolution, the body does what it's wired to do. It pulls back. In kids and teens, withdrawal drift may look like social withdrawal or selective mutism, lack of interest in previously enjoyable activities, sleep changes, oversleeping or chronic insomnia, emotional flatness, apathy, over-reliance on devices, sugar, or screens to self-regulate. The danger here is misinterpretation. We often label this as disobedience, tech addiction, or laziness. But underneath is a system that's protecting itself through disengagement. This is where the brain and body say, I don't feel safe enough to stay online, so I'm going dark. Putting it all together. The compass wasn't just built for grown-ups with burnout. It was designed to decode system-wide drift at any age. When we apply this lens to young people, we stop treating symptoms in isolation. We start seeing patterns of regulation failure, and we can intervene early, more gently, and more effectively. We ask, is this a nurture signal, gut, immune, emotional safety? Is this energize, mitochondrial overwhelm, fuel mismatch? Is this strengthen, repair deficit, structure underload? Is this withdrawal, collapse, sensory shutdown, nervous system fragility? And then we build a strategy that meets the body where it's at, not where we think it should be. When it comes to adults, rebuilding the system often requires layered strategies: mitochondrial repair, circadian recalibration, gut resets, micronutrient repletion, nervous system retraining. But with kids, small inputs go further, faster. Not because their systems are perfect, but because they're plastic, still malleable, still in a state of learning on every level. And when you give a young system the right signal at the right time, the recalibration can be profound. Let's break down what this looks like using the compass domains, because the most impactful interventions usually aren't flashy or expensive. They're consistent, and they're system first. Nurture. Start with the gut-brain-immune triangle. For most kids showing signs of drift, nurture is the first place to stabilize. That doesn't mean probiotic gummies and hope. It means food timing that reduces blood sugar roller coasters, especially breakfast and after school, removing ultra-processed foods that spike inflammation and confuse the gut-brain axis, adding real prebiotic fibers from bananas, oats, and root veggies, using targeted nutrients like butyrate, Biomend, for gut-brain immune signaling, immunoglobulins like immunolin for immune modulation and gut barrier support. These aren't adult-only tools, they're signal correctors, and young systems are often more responsive because the damage isn't as deep. Energize. Focus on recovery, not output. This is where most well-meaning parents or coaches get it wrong. When a kid is low energy, the impulse is to push. More sports, more activities, more stimulation. But if the mitochondria are taxed, that approach backfires. Instead, aim for zone 2 movement like biking, walking, and swimming. Sleep protection, even for teens. Yes, they need more sleep than they think they do. Light cues in the morning. Open the blinds, go outside, reset the clock. Nutritional inputs that fuel mitochondria. B vitamins, especially B2, B6, and B12. Magnesium for ATP support. Protein pacing across the day, not all in one meal. Teach young bodies to recover before you teach them to perform. Strengthen. Structure needs input, not just time. You can't build structure out of nothing. If a child is in a growth spurt, but their nutrient density is poor, that growth becomes fragile, and the results show up in joint pain, sleep issues, emotional swings, and poor immunity. So what helps? Micronutrient repletion, vitamin D, zinc, selenium, and omega-3s. Resistance activities, not just sports, climbing, lifting, crawling. Circadian anchored meals. That includes fats, proteins, and unprocessed carbs. Limiting nutrient robbers like soda, excessive caffeine, and ultra-refined snacks. We don't just want tall kids. We want resilient frameworks that can adapt, recover, and grow under load. And that starts early. Withdraw. Protect recovery windows. This is the most subtle and the most critical. When a child or teen shows signs of withdrawal, emotional flatness, social shutdown, sensory overwhelm, it's a signal that their recovery windows have collapsed. This isn't the time to add meditation apps or forced journaling. It's the time to restore nervous system safety. Start here. Protect a wind-down window. Screens off 60 minutes before bed. Use weighted blankets or low lighting to signal safety. Limit exposure to news, conflict, or overstimulation near bedtime. Prioritize face-to-face connection with a calm adult presence. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day makes a difference. Remember, safety isn't just about physical environment. It's about predictability. When a young body knows what to expect, it doesn't have to stay in alert mode. The bottom line, your inputs become their biology. Here's the reframe. Most people think of health interventions as punishment or restriction. Cut out sugar, go to sleep earlier, eat your veggies. But the compass teaches a different lens. Your inputs aren't control, they're communication. What you do today tells the biology what to do tomorrow. And in kids and teens, the biology is still listening, still building, still learning what normal means. Small cues, light, food, movement, connection, become the instructions their systems follow. Which means the greatest gift we can give our kids isn't control, it's clarity. Let's be honest, most parents don't miss the big stuff. Fevers, limps, ear infections, cuts, we know how to respond. But what about the slow changes? The mood that starts shifting, the energy that's just not quite there, the resilience that seems to fade week after week. That's biological drift, and in kids, it doesn't usually scream, it whispers. And if we don't have the right lens, those whispers get mislabeled. She's just emotional. He's not focusing. That's just puberty. But what we're often seeing isn't a personality flaw. It's physiological misalignment. Let's talk about how to spot it and how to track it. What drift looks like. Biological drift always starts subtly. And if you know what to look for, you'll catch the pattern before it becomes a problem. Here are a few early red flags broken down by compass domain. Nurture. More frequent colds, rashes, or seasonal allergies. Stomach aches after meals, constipation, or picky eating. Clinginess or heightened reactivity to stress. Poor sleep onset or waking up through the night. Energize. Low motivation to move or play. Crashes after school, low stamina during sports. Mood flattening or disinterest in things that they used to enjoy. Poor recovery from minor illnesses or exertion. Strengthen. Frequent growing pains or joint complaints. Trouble sleeping through the night despite exhaustion. Emotional outbursts tied to physical symptoms. Feeling heavy or slow even with adequate food. Withdrawal. Sensory overload. Noise, lights, crowds feel overwhelming. Emotional withdrawal, daydreaming, or zoning out. Apathy or frequent I don't care response. Rigid routines, sleep avoidance, or fear-based behaviors. Now, are these always causes for concern? No. But when they persist, especially in clusters, they signal that one domain is out of sync and that the system is compensating. So how to track without over-monitoring? You don't need a spreadsheet. You don't need wearable tech on your 6-year-old. You just need pattern awareness. Here's a simple weekly rhythm that helps you tune in. 1-sentence check-in. At the end of the week, ask yourself, what's different about my child this week? Energy, mood, digestion, sleep? 1 sentence, don't overthink it. The 3-signal scan. Use the compass to scan 3 basic outputs. Sleep, ease of falling asleep or staying asleep. Digestion, bloating, stool, or food intolerance. Mood and behavior, resilience, joy, reactivity. Is there a pattern forming in one direction? 3, the reset window. If you notice 2 or more signals drifting in the same domain, try a 2-week reset. This could be as simple as prioritizing gut support and early meals for nurture, increasing morning movement and reducing screens for Energize, anchoring bedtime routines and micronutrient intake for strengthen, removing sensory load and adding calm connection time for withdrawal. Then watch. Most children respond within days, not because they're fragile, but because their systems are still responsive. Don't wait for the crisis. One of the biggest mindset shifts we can offer as parents, caregivers, and clinicians is this. You don't need to wait for symptoms to stack before you intervene. You only need to spot the signal that drift has begun. That's what makes the compass model so powerful. It doesn't wait for a diagnosis. It doesn't require a lab test. It simply asks, where is the system drifting and what would it take to bring it back to baseline? And in kids, that baseline is more dynamic than any protocol. Up next, in our final segment, we'll walk through how to use the compass as a parenting framework, not just a recovery tool, and how to guide your child back towards stability without fear or over-control. So now we've reached the most important part of this episode. Not the science, not the symptoms, but how you show up as a guide. Because when your child starts drifting, what they need most isn't a supplement. It's not a stricter bedtime or a new rule, or even a perfectly tailored protocol. What they need is a regulated adult who can read the signs, respond without panic, and course correct without control. That's what we call compass parenting, and here's what it looks like in practice. 1. Use the drift domains as a lens, not a label. The compass model helps us decode signals, not assign fixed identities. If your child is anxious and reactive, maybe they're in a nurture drift and feel physiologically unsafe. Always tired and flat? It could be an Energize drift and their mitochondria aren't keeping up. Overwhelmed by everything? That might be withdrawal drift with nervous system shutdown. Growing fast but crashing hard? Sounds like strength and drift where structure can't keep pace. The point isn't to diagnose it. It's to see what support their biology needs right now. Just like adults, kids move through these domains. And when you know which one they're in, you don't have to guess how to help them. 2. Let's focus on small relational inputs. Children regulate through relationship, which means your tone, your presence, your energy. That's the intervention. You don't need to turn your home into a functional medicine clinic. You just need to create the conditions where drift slows down. Shared meals at regular times, morning light together outside, predictable sleep-wake rhythms, low sugar snacks and gut-nourishing meals, and emotional check-ins that aren't forced. These are compass-aligned inputs that build capacity, not control. 3. Be the barometer, not the storm. When a child's system is dysregulated, they borrow your nervous system. If you're reactive, they escalate. If you're grounded, they mirror it. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It means you model recovery. You show them what it looks like to feel off and still find your way back. So instead of what's wrong with you, try let's figure out what your body's trying to say. That's how drift becomes a diagnosis. 4. Use the drift quiz together. Here's something powerful you can do this week. Sit down with your child or teen, take the drift quiz together, and walk through the results. It's not about labeling them, it's about opening up a conversation. This says you might be in a nurture drift. Do you think that's true? What feels off lately? When kids feel heard, they're more likely to listen. even to their own bodies. The compass gives you a shared language to talk about energy, resilience, and recovery without shame or fear. The big picture: raising responsive, not resistant humans. We live in a world that pulls kids out of rhythm. Screens, processed foods, overscheduling, early puberty, emotional disconnection. It's a storm. But we don't need to control the storm. We just need to teach them how to use a compass. Because when a child knows how to read their own signals, they won't be as easily swayed by the culture of burnout. And when a parent knows how to respond to drift, they can guide without overcorrecting. That's the heart of compass parenting. Not perfection, just presence, pattern awareness, and small course corrections over time. If this episode stirred something in you as a parent, grandparent, educator, or caregiver, take the next step. Visit themetaboliccompass.com/quiz to take the free drift quiz. You'll see which compass domain your child or you are drifting in right now. And we'll give you a 2-week reset to match, because the earlier we course correct, the easier it is to come home to health. In the next episode, we're going to tackle one of the most controversial and confusing topics in modern health. Should you take Ozempic or GLP-1s, the compass reframe? We'll break down the physiology of these medications, who they actually help, and why they're not just about weight. More importantly, we'll explore what they reveal about broken biology and how to rebuild it from the inside out. See you there. You've been listening to the Metabolic Compass podcast, where we bridge cutting-edge science with real-life application to help you reclaim your health, one directional shift at a time. To learn more, visit us at www.themetaboliccompass.com or follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Metabolic Compass. And if you haven't already, leave a review. It helps others find their way back to alignment too. Recalibrate your biology, rediscover your direction.